All right, looks so like we're right at 7 p.m. As we like to do all things starting on time, we'll go ahead and begin our 2022-2023 Virtual College Information Night. My name is Martin Kirkwood, and I am one of the school counselors here at Cathedral High School. I am new this year to Cathedral High School, but have been in the profession for about 25 years now, and really excited to be joining the Cathedral family and all the wonderful staff we have in the counseling office and all the wonderful students and families that are part of the school here. So at this point, you should be seeing on your screens the person speaking, which is me at this time. And we also have our panelists, we're all the school counselors serving here at Cathedral High School. I will do a formal introduction of them and our department here when I begin sharing the Google Slides presentation that will be the majority of our evening presentation. And again, I want to welcome all of our families of the class of 2022-2023, our junior and seniors, our sophomores and junior students this year at Cathedral. And I'd like to begin with prayer if we could. So I'm going to read from the Holy Cross, Our Only Hope, Daily Reflections in the Holy Cross Tradition. And they're just a neat reading for January 12th that I thought kind of frames what we're about here at Cathedral High School and what we're trying to do for our students and what we hope to be for them in that process as counselors and parents. So I'll begin by reading a quote from Basil Moreau. Far from me to be the thought of attributing to myself the merit of the truly providential works which have just arisen under my direction. After God, who alone is the author of all good, it is to the devotedness of my fellow priests and to your own that we owe what we can be seen today at Holy Cross, which astounds everybody. I have been but a simple instrument, which the Lord will soon break, that he may substitute for it others more worthy. And it goes on to talk a little bit about the instrument and really allowing God to work through us to be that instrument to help us serve others. And certainly Basil Moreau did that in his work in founding the Holy Cross Order, which we follow here at Cathedral High School. And I pray that all of us as the school counselors, as I mentioned, will be that for our students. So I'll just say a little prayer in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear God, we thank you for this wonderful opportunity to join together as a Cathedral family in the Holy Cross tradition to work with our students to help them really discover, develop, discern, and ultimately deliver those gifts that you've given and blessed them with. Please be with us tonight as we talk about this important process of thinking about what they're going to do after high school and how they can go about doing that in the most effective and appropriate way, and continue to keep us all humble and recognize that we are truly instruments to serve others and do good here in this world and hopefully join you in heaven. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. So as I mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and share our presentation and do a little bit of an introduction of the department and overview of the evening. So let me go ahead and share my screen here with our presentation. And hopefully this will work as I'm beginning to learn technology. I didn't quite get it to present. Here we go. Is that all looking like the full screen now to everybody? Panelists tell me, awesome. So this is an overview of our evening, and I hope to get through this in about 15 minutes and leave about 10 minutes at the end for us all to answer questions and give you a chance in the questions or the chat to ask those questions of us. But this presentation I've put together is going to go over these tasks here with introducing the counseling department, planning for the college in 6 steps, and that's going to be the majority of the presentation, and I will share that with you here next. And we also have, just to make our parents aware, started the presentations to your students in their religion classrooms. So what we're sharing tonight is going to be a little bit different flavor of that presentation, but many of these slides are the exact same things your students have been seeing as we started that today with a couple of our religion classes. And then we're going to talk about the Naviance product and the updates with that. And one of those updates is we've just announced that parents can get access. And I sent an email out last night to all of our parents explaining how to access that and giving you links to do so. So we'll highlight some of those features and ways that we use that product with your students, and also demonstrate to you then how you can work with your students and see what they're doing and help them along this process. And then finally, we'll talk about our individual follow-up appointments where we'll meet with each of our students in the alphabetical order we'll talk about in a minute, and help them move along the process after they've done the homework with us. So we'll explain that process and how we're doing that. So as I mentioned, you got to see us live there at the top of most of the counselors in the department. This is the Cathedral High School School Counseling Department. And as all of you hopefully know, as we sent out the beginning of the year, the department has gone through restructuring, where we're moving to a model where we're working with our students and all 4 grade levels by alphabet. So you'll see those alphabet assignments here with Mrs. Brandis working with students last names A through CO, Mrs. Denny working with students CR through G, Mrs. Pavanka working H through LA, Mrs. Watko L through MC. I will be working with students ME through SA, and finally Ms. Myers, students SC through Z. And that change was intentional and part of a self-evaluation that Cathedral did with their school counseling program to look at how to better serve their students. This is a program that's used in a lot of schools across the country, and one past school I was at, I'm very familiar with that, and allows us to get to know our students well, our parents and our families, and really hopefully guide them along that process and all those areas that we work with them in. So we will be doing that model, I think, moving forward, and hopefully have that a little bit more stabilized, that you will have a consistent counselor you know. But all the counselors are available to students and parents for any questions you might have, just in our assigned task as we'll be meeting with those students that fall in our alphabets there. The counseling department mission statement follows very closely to Cathedral's, following the Holy Cross order, really focusing on those 3 main areas as school counselors work with: the academic primarily, and then the social, emotional, and personal, and then certainly helping our students with those personal goals and spiritual goals as well. So to kind of frame what we're talking about tonight, we're going to go over the planning for college in 6 simple steps. This is a presentation that I've used about 15 years, and I really like that it makes the process and breaks it down in very simple ways to understand. And it's put out by the ACT organization, which is one of the companies that produces the college entrance exam. And they put out a lot of resources for counselors and students and families. And I really have found this to be probably one of the most effective presentations for what we're trying to accomplish here tonight. So we are going to begin with that here, and I'll go through these slides as we want to certainly make sure we're talking about all kinds of options after high school, as we say, post-secondary planning, but we will focus tonight on college. But certainly there's a lot of students that are looking at different ways. My past job prior to coming to Cathedral High School was working for basically establishing a trade program, helping people become pilots to work for an airline here. And in that role, I promoted and recruited students right out of high school to get trained to be a commercial airline pilot, where they did not have to have a college degree and could have a wonderful career. So in the trades, you'll see lots of options like that. I think in the coding area, in some of the healthcare areas, we're seeing that. Military program and opportunities, going directly into work, apprenticeships and proprietary schools, all kinds of options after high school. But we are going to focus, as I said tonight, on college. And I highlighted this with our students we talked about today, but really remember, decision-making is a process, not an event. And the reason I like to highlight that is I think sometimes we kind of have that goal of having that bumper sticker we're going to place in the car and say we're done. And that's really what this is about. But ultimately, it's the process of that discernment and prayerfully considering where God is calling our students and helping them see those different college characteristics and ways that they can research that and figure out exactly where they need to be to make that happen best. So we want to focus on the process and make sure our students are fully engaged in that. So the first step, know yourself and your reasons for attending college. And I'd like to start here again, because as we think about this, we really want to understand what God has created us to do and is calling us to do with those gifts and talents and those strengths. So we're going to ask your students to spend some time reflecting on that, not just choosing a college again by name or maybe just a major, but really what is it that they're calling them, being called to do by God. So looking at their strengths, we will every year work with your students on some type of inventory where they'll be able to do a self-reflection. And those are the homework assignments for our students. The sophomores will be doing a personality, and the juniors will be doing an interest inventory and reflecting on those results and learning more about themselves, and then seeing how that relates and connects then to careers, college majors, and eventually colleges. Some students have obviously achieving a personal goal, increasing your earning power, reasons we choose colleges. We also might be preparing, as I said, for those careers, extracurricular activities. A lot of our students want to go on and play sports and get involved in different aspects of the school that way. And the influence of family and friends, maybe wanting to follow in their parents' footsteps. So certainly there's lots of reasons we choose colleges, and understanding what those reasons are that we're helping our students in this process is an important place to start. As I emphasize today to the students, and will continually do, I want them to take responsibility for their future. I know as a parent, I've had 3 students go through this process myself. And I know that those that were very independent in the process are the ones that have been very successful in completing that process. So I would highlight the desire and hope to get your students taking responsibility for these steps and being active in leading that and not having the parents do that for them. The second step, consider your college characteristics. And this is where we need to make sure students understand these things and then begin to understand they can utilize them to do some searching to find some schools that might be good fits. So, we talk about schools that students might not know about, understanding the difference between a liberal arts college and a research institution, an in-state school, an out-of-state, a 2-year college, a 4-year college, a selective college, colleges that are affiliated with certain faith traditions, activities and accreditations, costs, location and size. So many characteristics to really begin to help your students, as I said, know what's going to be a good fit for them. And so we're going to ask them some of these questions. What are they thinking about? What are those criteria they're going to use in their search process to help us identify and confirm and encourage them to look at schools maybe that have a little bit different characteristics to really make sure they've done that thoughtfully and really discerned what's going to be good for them. Next, step 3, we want them to list, compare, visit colleges. And so this step, after we kind of understand the college characteristics, we want to begin to develop that list. We want to begin to compare those different opportunities out there. And the many different resources that are available to students to help them with that is incredibly important. Here in the counseling office, we're going to use that Naviance product that we're going to highlight and show you as our primary source to both research and store that information and compile that list and able to compare things. But there's many other resources out there, from the websites for the colleges themselves to the college board on their PSAT results. They were introduced to some tools to use the college board website to research careers in colleges, to many other resources out there. I actually use a lot of the catalogs still in the old-fashioned books to look at college majors and recommendations to help students look at some possible options for them. We do have a number of college representatives coming to visit at Cathedral High School this past spring. I think we had over 70 colleges visit virtually with our students in college fairs in the local community. Hopefully we'll move back to some in-person activities with that, and we promote those, and we'll let your students and know about those opportunities. Hearing from your counselors and even their teachers. A lot of the teachers have been through this process and might know your students and give them some good recommendations on that. And certainly the parents and the students in the college themselves and alumni are going to be great resources to learn about those schools. As I mentioned here, the comparison checklist, there'll be some tools we'll share with the students to help them with that and helping them weigh those advantages and disadvantages. They also will want to be able to contact the admissions office to gather some information, insights, and maybe schedule those appointments as we get to talk about visits next. And certainly this year's been a little different with COVID, and many of the colleges have closed down in-person visits, but those are starting to open up. We've seen a little bit, and hopefully by the next fall, our students will have an opportunity to get up there back to do the normal college visit. So we'll talk a little bit about that process as well. And that's really important to get on those college campuses. I've been on probably 100 campuses in my career, and every one of them has a little different feel. And that's made up by the building, the location, the people, the programs. And until you've actually had the opportunity to get on that campus and walk around and interact, it really is not something I think they can fully understand. And I think the majority of my students over the 25 years have said it's when I went on that visit that really sealed it for me. I knew that's where I needed to be. Or I went on this campus visit and that turned out to be one of the worst places ever, and I never want to go there. So again, that visit, it can help the students really understand that individual college, as well as highlight some of those characteristics that maybe they are learning about on their tours and presentations and interacting with students that they then can start to look at other colleges. So the checklist for the campus visit, these are some of the traditional things that we would recommend students do on those as we open up to getting back to do in person. And certainly the admissions counselors in those offices, those are going to be the counselors oftentimes that are reviewing applications. And when they come here to visit either virtually or in person, those actual admissions counselors that visit Cathedral High School are the ones that read the applications of our students. And so getting the opportunity to meet those counselors, let them get to know your students is something we recommend. Oftentimes it's a demonstrated interest to the colleges that helps sometimes in that admission process. And on that visit, they can talk with them about their admission requirements, understanding how they're utilizing test scores, how the rigor of the curriculum is important to them. Lots of different things that you'll learn from the admissions offices, and hearing directly from them can be helpful on that visit. And understand the cost of the schools and have maybe an opportunity to talk to somebody in the financial aid office and learn about all that's going to be very helpful. And then again, taking that campus tour. And there are many opportunities, even with the COVID situation. I know some schools are offering campus tours virtually that you can do. And I think that's helpful to see it. And then there's even some self-guided tours if they're not providing their tour guides right now, but you can walk around campus and they have different resources for you to be able to know what you're looking at, what you should look at in those tours. So highly recommend that students and parents make those trips and include those parts of that visit. We also want students to think about, if they know for sure their academic program or their majors, to talk to somebody in that. I know some of the colleges will have the opportunity for students to meet with the professors that are in charge of those different programs to talk about their criteria, the requirements to get in, and talk about their graduation and where their students go and what types of preparation they have for maybe professional programs and how they do with that. So don't forget to focus in on that major and maybe talking to somebody that's involved directly with that in that school. Some campuses allow our students to attend classes and actually see it in person, get a feel for what it's like to sit in that large lecture hall or possibly that small classroom and understand the difference in that type of school. And then talking with students and faculty on the campus as you walk around, and sometimes just following up with emails is a great way to communicate and learn more about those schools. We do definitely want students to understand their admission chances, and we'll talk a little bit at the end here about some categories we look at, but making sure that we're not having students surprised when they get those admission letters, and understanding the criteria that they're looking for and the ways they can prepare themselves to be best competitive for those. But we also want you to understand looking at graduation rates. So there's some great tools in Naviance and some other resources to kind of look at that and what does that mean for your student, how might that play out. And again, back to that placement into the medical schools, into the professional schools, undergraduate schools, the law school. Looking at those numbers and understanding how the schools have been in their past students with that will probably work on helping you understand if that's going to be a good fit for your students as they're looking into those specific programs. The fourth step, and this is going to be in the senior year, but as I told the students today, it's something they need to understand is coming and have a basic appreciation for it, and don't want them to get intimidated and overwhelmed by this, but certainly to be aware of it. And I'll mention it here, as I don't think I mentioned it to our students, but we do in the counseling office provide lots of opportunities for our rising seniors to get help and resources with that. They've always offered a kind of a boot camp for helping our rising seniors over the summer to begin that process and walk them through this. This past summer, due to COVID, we moved that to an online platform and was very successful, and lots of beautiful, wonderful resources for the students to do that. So again, we're going to review this today. I don't need to memorize these. We definitely will walk through with your students with this and provide some additional opportunities, as well as that senior college information night that will provide when it's time for your student to do that. But we're going to ask the students at that time to really begin to narrow their choices down. So I don't think I've said it yet here, but we ask students to kind of build that list up and try to get out to 10 to 15 schools that they're thinking about. And then when they get down to their senior year, to think about maybe applying to 3 to 8 colleges. And I'll highlight that here in another slide to kind of tell you how we look at that and why we ask for that. But they want to get that narrowed down as they begin that application process. And again, understand the admission test requirements. This is a big area. It has changed drastically this year with COVID. And I'll just speak to it a little bit here and some more later. But because of the number of high schools across the country and having them shut down and gone virtual, and the number of the test centers not being available to take the SATs and ACTs this past spring and this fall, many colleges, in fact, most, went to being either test optional, test blind, or not requiring those college entrance tests like most of us were used to. We had seen a trend where the many schools were going to kind of test optional. And I think we'll see that trend continue and probably grow as a result. We don't know what it's going to be like at the end of this. And I don't want students and or parents to think because they didn't require them this year that our students don't have to take them seriously or prepare for them. So we definitely want to make sure you're communicating with colleges, and we're hearing already from some, they're starting to reflect on how that process went this year and how they might use some of those practices in the future and how they might adapt and go back to some of the ways of evaluating students with test scores. So we'll talk more about that specifically, but definitely want to kind of call that out because I know we've had a lot of students this year, seniors, struggle with that, and a lot of families are starting to ask that as far as the future. Understand the application fees and deadlines. Again, that's something the students will need to understand in the senior year, and even the scholarship requirements to help afford the college. Some of those things, both the requirements and the scholarship opportunities, what your students do as sophomores and juniors can help prepare them for that. I had a student who was working on a caddy scholarship the past 4 years and just applied for that this year. So the activities he was doing leading up to that certainly was helpful, and knowing what those requirements were for that. Submitting applications, this you can tell is a little older presentation with the word paper on there, but we actually had a a paper application. I had one that just got returned in the mail to me for a college that was a paper application, but they actually shut down. So maybe not a good sign if they require paper applications, but there are some out there, but most of them are electronic. And there's a major form that we have students do with a common application. It's an electronic place to go to create an account. And lots of colleges use that for their application process to make it simpler on students to go to one place. Some colleges use other common applications. There's a coalition app and some other organizations that have kind of come together with that. And then some colleges just use their own applications right on their website. We call those the institutional applications. So understanding the differences of that as the students get in their senior year will be important, and which platform they want to use will help guide them through that. But they'll apply. The main things we get questions on: what do colleges use to decide admission for their students? The first thing they're going to look at is that high school transcript. And with that, they're really trying to discern and look at what has the student done to be prepared for our college. And this is where the rigor of the schedule is really important in understanding what's appropriate for your students, as we're going to also begin the scheduling process this year at the end of January, and will involve the individual meetings where we'll kind of review that with your students. But I definitely want to emphasize to parents that you want to make sure your students are fully challenging themselves. And that's for two main reasons. One, it's going to make them look more competitive for the colleges if they can do that, take more rigorous courses. But two, it's going to challenge them and prepare them to develop those skills and habits to be successful in college. And I've worked at a number of different high schools, some of the schools where they didn't do much homework and studying and they weren't used to that rigor. They get to college and struggle. And other of the private schools I've worked in require a lot of that discipline and rigor. And that's where you see students being much more successful in college. So ultimately, we want to make sure that we are getting our students prepared by helping them develop those habits. And it's through the rigor of the curriculum and the courses that they take that's going to help with that. And that's what the counselors are going to be using to evaluate our students. And we even just had our early decisions for the University of Notre Dame. And we talked to the counselor from that school, and he talked about some of the students, why they got in, why they didn't. And some of that was regarding the rigor of the student's schedule. And certainly that sometimes something we want to make sure our families are aware of as well. But we don't want to over challenge our students. They need to be in the appropriate levels, and Cathedral has a number of levels and opportunities, and we work with them in helping guide that in that process. They'll need recommendation letters, so they'll be needing to think about their teachers, that they've gotten to know them well and can write specific things about them to help share that with the admissions department so they can make that decision. And then again, those admission test results and understanding what those requirements are. So those are the main components that are used in the evaluation for the college admission process. And that's what's submitted electronically now to these colleges. And we'll, again, work with your students in the senior year, helping them figure those steps out at that time. For the parents, probably the most important one, develop a plan to finance your education. And that is an important one. I said to the students, this is probably the second most expensive thing the students will do. And some of us parents have more than one student. So it actually becomes much more expensive than our homes when we think about how much we paid for college education. So certainly it's an important thing to prepare for. And as families, you can do a lot now to begin to understand what that's going to look like. First is understanding those college costs and understanding the average aid packages and some ways that people can do that. There's many different tools from cost estimators out there on the websites of the colleges. That's a requirement now, where you would actually put in some of your financial information and begin to get information, projections about how much you could expect to pay, how much you might get in loans, and any scholarship opportunities. So knowing that information as a sophomore, as a junior parent is going to be helpful. There are also some investment strategies and tax and ways to think about this. It's a very complex process. We are not experts as counselors in all those areas. I know there's some folks in the local community that do some presentations and programs on that, and the colleges themselves are probably your best resource for helping determine that. But we definitely want our parents to be very well aware of some of those things as you want to be planning and preparing for that now. And then helping your students understand that. And there's lots of different ways to look at that, from getting them to think about scholarships and how they can best prepare for that, and then talking about loans and other ways to do that and other sources. So we, as I said, are not experts in everything with this, but we do have some knowledge and personal experiences with that. Will certainly help our families with that. If you're looking for some folks that have more expertise, we can help you find that. I would say we don't expect parents to look for or pay for somebody to advise them on these topics, though. There are many companies and websites out there that, quite honestly, I think take advantage of the fear and worry and charge money for families to do that. Ultimately, I would say in the search process, we don't want students and or parents worrying about a college and eliminating that because of the sticker price that they're seeing. And that's largely due to we don't know in the end what that financial aid package is going to look like. And I think the statistic today, and this is primarily for the private colleges, but the average sticker price is discounted or scholarships are offered in loans about half of that amount. So you might have a $50,000 price tag, but the average student or family is going to pay $25,000 to send their child to that school for their first year. So don't eliminate those colleges up front. There are some schools that are much more financially friendly, as we say. They tend to offer very good packages, especially to students that are strong academic students. And so we can help you kind of navigate that and look for some of those schools. There are other schools that meet on 100% of the demonstrated financial need. So if your family is limited resources and demonstrates high financial need, there are some colleges out there that actually would offer a very good package to help you pay and afford that college. So there's lots of different resources and types of schools out there. We definitely don't want you to eliminate schools up front until we help you understand and go through that full process. Filling out the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, is done now in the senior year, and it's looking at tax information from the year prior. So that would be looking at that 2019 tax information for this year's senior class, I believe. So we'll go over our financial aid information. We have a separate presentation the senior year for that, but want our parents to have a better understanding of what's coming and how we look at that in the search process for your students. This is a nice sheet just to use as kind of an understanding of what fees are charged. In the basic sticker price you're going to see is usually going to be a total budget in many cases, but sometimes it's just for tuition. Room and board, books and supplies, transportation, miscellaneous. Every college is supposed to have a total budgeted cost, and then they evaluate your FAFSA and maybe an institutional financial aid application to come up with what they call your expected family contribution. So the total cost of maybe a public school is going to be $20,000. Some private schools might be $50,000. If your expected family contribution is $25,000, you're not likely to get any aid here at that public institution, but the private institution will look at that and maybe that's where they're able to help offer some scholarships and loans to help bring that cost down to what your family can afford. So that will, again, we'll spend more time in the senior year talking about that, but just want that basic understanding. This is a nice slide to kind of highlight how you can begin to evaluate those differences. The final step, review and finalize your plans. So this is where we want the students taking the initiative, as I said before, and making sure they really know what is required of them, making sure they've done all those things that they need to get done, and make sure they're prepared for this final step. The college admission process, they will apply to schools in that senior year. Admission decisions come out on different time frames. But one of the things that's important to know that the colleges have what's called the national decision date, of May 1. So students don't have to tell a college today until May 1 if they plan to accept that admissions acceptance letter. And if you're like, your children are like my children, I know a lot of them change their minds. So we always say that you're not making that final college decision until that end of your senior year and making that decision of which one you're going to attend. You need to apply by November 1st in many cases, but that final decision isn't going to be made till the May 1 after you've got your aid packages and been able to evaluate all that information. And then we need to talk to their parents, obviously, and their counselor, and helping them make that final decision. Select the college that meets their needs and preferences. And this, again, is where we really want those students to think deeply about who they are, who they're created by God to be, where they're going to best develop that, and really make sure that's where they head for their next step. Because what we want them to be is fully engaged to develop those gifts and talents further. And it's going to be different for every one of our students. And then finally, follow up with those colleges where you've applied. This is one of my favorite slides because I think many of us get worried about those measurable success factors or even admission criteria factors of grades and test scores. And some of those things, some of us aren't the greatest at. Maybe we haven't performed the best in high school. And that will impact the outcome of some of the decisions and probably impact the outcome of your college experience. However, on the right side, the non-measurable, these are what I want to emphasize and continue to work with our parents to get our students to really work on developing these strong study habits, good motivation. Boy, has that been tough with COVID and doing your classes from your bed. You know, helping them get focused again, dialed back in. Mr. Matthews read a great prayer. We're moving into ordinary time and we need to get them back into those habits in the church calendar, and getting them thinking about how they're going to develop these habits and get them back righted as we need to do at this point. And all those things that are non-measurable to me are going to be much more reflective of what's going to help your student be successful in college and hopefully in the application process as well. So continue emphasizing those soft skills, as we say, and helping them develop those. Keep in mind, making sound decisions will lead to satisfying and successful experiences. So we really want to make sure that students have done this process right and well, so that when they get there, they're happy, they're successful, they're not transferring colleges and spending 6 years to earn their degree, as we're seeing more and more of that happening. And I would argue some of that's due to not fully going through this process as we would like our students to. So I think that's going to wrap up my presentation for the 6 steps, and hopefully that was helpful. This is going to be recorded and you can watch this. I actually recorded a shorter version of this for your students that we shared to them in their classrooms today. The next portions are what we're going to go into is a little bit more about Naviance, but I'm going to take a pause and a breath and make sure that I'm not missing anything. So Ms. Pavanka, I saw you pop on there.
We have a few questions we'll answer at the end. They're not Naviance specific, so go for it.
Okay. Well, if that's okay, I'm trying to keep track of myself. I did that in 30 minutes, which is pretty good for me. So we probably got about 15 minutes here, and we'll leave about 15 minutes to answer questions and maybe demonstrate some of this Naviance product for our parents. Is it new to you? So as I mentioned, I sent that email out last night. It should have been received around 7 p.m. Hopefully it went to your email that is our PowerSchool product. And I found that many parents have not been updating, and for some reason that maybe is not an email you received. But that email came from my name, and it was to introduce you to Naviance. It included a little summary of what's available to your students in that product and what you can see and review as a parent now with that parent access. And it gave you a link to the website to get there, and it gave you your registration code, which you'll need that's unique to your student. If you have more than one student, the registration code is the same, and so you'll be able to see all of your students that are currently registered at Cathedral with that. I've only activated, I believe, the sophomore and junior parents. I will be sending out a separate email to our freshmen and senior parents once we get this process rolling. So if you have a senior or a freshman, you maybe didn't get that information for them, but that'll be coming soon. But with the parent accounts, you will need to go through that process in that link and create your own account. These are going to be basically imaging what a student does and sees. So you're going to see the student name in there, and you won't be able to do anything for the students. You will just be able to view them and what they are doing and understand what they're seeing. And you can use some of the search tools and do some research, but you can't add certain things. The only thing we're allowing parents to add are colleges to their list. And we're doing that to allow you to do that. And it does tell us who's added that college to the list, but it'll help us counselors if you have a specific school you want your students to look at and us to discuss with them. If you were to add that to their college list, it will help us see that. They did redesign Naviance just over this break, and they launched that. So we went ahead and activated that. So our students and parents now are all seeing this new, fresher design, which I'm going to give you an example of here in a minute. Parents may not know the difference unless they spent some time with their students before. And then we are assigning tasks to your students in Naviance, and I'll show you where that is. And basically, as I told our classes today, you know, our school counseling program here at Cathedral High School has standards that we are responsible for teaching your students and making sure they master, just like a math teacher. The problem is they don't give us a class. They don't give us a textbook to work with your students on. So we really use Naviance as our textbook, and we go into classes, and thankfully the religion teachers are allowing us to help partner with that and kind of support some of the work that they do with your students. And so having your students use the Naviance product as that textbook, it even has some assessments. So we had them take a pre-test today to see if we're actually going to teach them anything, and we'll offer them a post-test. And that's done under a Naviance curriculum, which is a new product that Naviance put out that basically walks students through different self-discovery, academic, college, and career planning tasks for them to do. And that's utilized in schools that maybe don't have access to school counselors like us, and it's just a turnkey. They go only to do 17 lessons for their junior year. We open that up to our students, and we'll give them some of those activities to do, but we also individualized it and specialized some specific tasks that you'll see here in a minute with an individual task there. So for parents, I'm not going to go into this with you in depth right now, but I'm highlighting a couple of the screens that you're likely to have seen when you clicked and logged in. And then if we have time at the end, I'll demonstrate this live for you. But basically, you either saw this Naviance screen over here that looks like this, welcome to Naviance student, and the parents would go in through this here once you've created your account. If you've not created your account, you're going to go to I'm new and need to register. And that will be found here on this screen if you happen to get it to that one for some reason, or down here on this one if you get to this. Once you create your parent account, you will have now a username and password that you entered in that process. You will log in here in the future with that username and password and click continue. For our student accounts, we have synced their Naviance accounts with the product Clever for the single sign-on, and the students actually are told to use this versus using their username and password. I think we originally started with this, but they've now gone to where this is all synced. So if a student changes their username or password, it's going to sync with Clever, with Schoology, with PowerSchool, so they only have one tool to get into. That required us to have Google accounts for all of our email addresses, and not all parents utilize that. So we're using this separate process of putting in your own email or username and then password for our parents. So whatever you use to create this account will now become your username and password to get in as a parent to view your student's Naviance student account. This is a redesigned image of that. You wouldn't know different if you've never been into it before. It's not the greatest image. It's a little small. I would have blown this up, but I wanted to get you the overall view of what's there. This is the student. These tabs at the top are the 4 main tabs. And this product we really like because it goes through self-discovery as the first step. You know, who you are, who God created you, helping you understand that is where we should start. Then looking into careers, and there's some tools, and I'll go through each of these tabs a little bit more. And then you can begin from after knowing who you are and what careers might be possible, what are some majors, and therefore what are some colleges I might want to go to. And then they have a planner tab to keep track of all of that. And that's where some of their homework assignments will be. Over on the right, I think behind my picture that I've got on my screen, there's a tab over here about me. They can look up their test scores. If they click on that, it has their PSAT and SAT scores in there. They can look up their GPAs and some other information. This is also under the section that where students can change their usernames and passwords, as can parents. That'll be found under your about me. You just need to make sure you get onto the student versus on the parent versus the student information when you're starting to make those changes if you need to do so. This is the welcome message. The favorites. We're asking your students to favorite for the sophomores, the career information primarily, and for the juniors, the colleges, but both of them could do that. And then that will take you quickly to those colleges that you favored that are now stored in the Naviance product for your students. Down here, important to-dos and tasks, I'll show that in a different screen, but this is where their homework is assigned to them. So this is that first homework assignment that we're asking your students to go into and begin doing some of the activities that we asked them to do in the classroom presentations this week. So this is that first self-discovery section. Underneath here are the different assessments. They used to be in different places in Naviance. Now they put them all under one area. And so, as I mentioned, we're working with our sophomores on taking the personality. It's AchieveWorks is the company. It was formerly called Do What You Are, which I love that term. But that's what we'll have our sophomores take this inventory. It is based upon the Myers-Briggs type indicator. So you'll see that personality type for this sample student is an ENFJ. And if they would review the results, they'll see a lot about themselves. And then for their junior year, we're going to have them do the career interest profiler. And this is based off of the Holland traits, what used to be called the self-directed search. I believe now it's called the strong interest inventory. That is another product that Naviance has worked with and helps students get to know their interest. And both of these are going to compare their personalities and their interests and suggest careers to them that people that share that trait are happily employed in. So it might be a good way for them to begin to discern what college or what careers might I be interested in and be good fits in research. They might read something about a word actuary and not know what that is. That's where they go in and click and read. They look at the salary, they look at the education. So we really are trying to emphasize to the student the process of understanding themselves, learning more about what's out there and possible using these tools and looking at those careers and college majors, and then trying to transition them over to the colleges. So that's where we're moving from self-discovery to the careers. Under the careers, you're going to be able to do some different search tools here, look up specific school careers, read about those. But there's also a really nice, as we get into this YouTube generation, videos, over 8,000 videos of people that have been interviewed on different topics. And it's basically about their search process, where they've gone, what they did right, what they would do differently, what they would recommend. If you have a passion for this, here's some ideas. If you're interested in this career, here's what you might do. And so I think instead of watching those silly cat tricks or whatever else they do on YouTube these days, as I say, I would love to see students spend some time looking at these videos and spending time researching a little bit about their futures. And this is a wonderful resource to do that. Lots of different topics and ways that they can go ahead and research and read about that, and hopefully stumble into and have the Holy Spirit guide them to some powerful ways to think about their futures as well. And then finally, the colleges tab. Once we know what we want to be, what major might be appropriate, now let's do that college search process. And so on this screen, you're going to see the opportunity to click on these links. The parent accounts, you have access to click in all of these and see what the students have done. Some you can do some searching, but some you'll just see their list, for example. This is where parents, if you clicked on this, you could add colleges in their colleges I'm thinking about tab. And that's how you could add and let them know that. There's also some scholarship search tools inside of Naviance to help families and students look at those resources. And there's a national search as well as local scholarships we put up. And this is a great resource for our families and students to research colleges. So onto the colleges exploration and what we're really asking your students to do and where they should be in this process to really do what we think is a full and comprehensive plan with that. So you'll notice up here, adding colleges to the college I'm thinking about, that's putting a heart or favoriting them, and adding 10 to 15 colleges, I would say by the end of their junior year. And they can actually even begin to list their level of interest, high interest, somewhat low. And having those in there will let us as a counselor, you as a parent, the students know where they are in that process. They can add, delete, change their interest level. But I would recommend you understand the different types of schools and the admission chances I talked about earlier. So we kind of talk about in the industry, stretch school is realistic and safety. Dream school is realistic fallbacks. The way we think about that is, what is this student's realistic chances of being admitted and parents being able to afford and that student end up attending that school? So if we have 3 stretch schools, that might be the highly selectives. We talk about 10% admission rate, University of Notre Dame, expensive schools, whatever it is that might be for not a good guarantee for our student. And we'll talk about the mid 50%. So you can look up statistics and Naviance will show that the average student I was just looking up, Miami in Florida, the average student I think had a 1350 to a 1450 SAT score, highly selective, right? 10% admission rate. So finding out that information will help you categorize which schools you have where. If students have 12 schools in stretch, I'm probably going to suggest they have a realistic. And I really am impressed upon students. I want that fallback, that safety. Dad loses a job, COVID happens. We might need to go to IDPI and stay at home and get a great education, right? So having schools in each category in the search process, 10 to 15. And then when we apply, I would say at least 1 from each category is what we're going to ask. 3 to 8 colleges we're going to apply to in that senior year. So hopefully that gives you a good overview of kind of where we want your students. We'll have students do more than that. We'll have some students do less, but that's really idealistically where I'd like to see them be. On that colleges page, which I'll show you in a minute in Naviance, they will have those admission requirement majors and data points I talked about. One of the most useful is called scattergrams. And this is actual students from Cathedral High School comparing them to your student and their information that we have in Naviance. Their current GPA, we haven't uploaded the first semester grades. They just got finalized today, and those will get uploaded in the next week or 2. And their PSAT scores, if they have it, it'll predict a future SAT score and place your student around these students that have applied to that school. So at Indiana University, you'll see the average student at Cathedral High School had a 1200 SAT score, an average of 3.8 GPA, but there's lots of green around them. Down below, there might be the red X's start happening when you get down to below a 1050 SAT score and below a 3.5 GPA. So the mid 50% range is also another way to look at that, but the scattergrams kind of visualize that. And then your student will get a blue dot right where they are with their GPA and their test scores to kind of know where they fit in with Paths Cathedral students in their admission. So that'll hopefully be a helpful tool. It's not a be all end all. There's certainly different standards and ways that students get in, don't get in. So sometimes you see a green up down here and you wonder how. It might be an athlete or something. So using those as just a piece of information is what we would recommend your students do in that process. And then certainly we want them to link to the college's website and do that research directly from the college, because many colleges have different information. They might have changed their information that they had in the database. So we want to make sure we're looking for the real information from the college. Homework for students. I'm almost done here. Your students were all told to do these things. The first thing under the task we showed them was that Naviance curriculum. The first task inside of that or activity is a pre-test called What Do You Know? Again, that's our midterm exam, we call it, since we're halfway through the year. What do you know about the FAFSA? What do you know about college characteristics? What do you know about fit? And they answer those questions. And we'll review that. We don't have a lot of knowledge and understanding of this. We'll spend more time with your students the rest of this year working on that as a group. Individually, we'll be able to see the results and help guide and advise them through the process. We want all students developing their resume and adding that into Naviance and really focusing on what's going to help them develop their gifts, not necessarily building out the resume for admission, but how can they really get involved in some activity. We talked about our upcoming activity fair coming up. Those 2 inventories I mentioned, they will take about 10 to 15 minutes to do those, and they can retake those. If they don't, if they want to take some of the other inventories in there, they can always do that as well. The super match is a nice tool to put in a lot of criteria, and it pulls up a list of colleges recommended. And then we want to add those careers and colleges to their list so they can see what they are, you can see, and they have those as favorites and help us. And the final thing is to schedule their individual meetings with us, but we won't let them do that until they've done this homework. So we asked them to fill out a survey, basically proving and answering some questions that let us know that they've actually engaged in the homework and are ready now to sit down individually one-on-one with us to help us give them that additional guidance and advice where they could go and answer those questions that they might have. So that's a quick overview of what we're asking your students to do. I didn't finish. I got 2 more slides. I forgot. The college entrance test. I mentioned the SAT and some of the changes. All the sophomores and juniors took the PSAT with us at Cathedral. Those that did, those results will be in Naviance now. And they got an email in December from the college board about those results. And we sent a separate email encouraging them and giving them some videos to look at those and use all those wonderful resources of practice for the upcoming SAT and ACTs. Our recommendation is all juniors would have taken at least 1 SAT and 1 ACT by the end of the junior year. And for our sophomores that are in Algebra 2, I don't want all parents and sophomores thinking we need to take an SAT or an ACT, but that is the highest level math tested on those tests. So sometimes we see sophomores like to get that in while they still remember that. So that is an option to do that. But at least 1 SAT, 1 ACT by the end of the junior year. See where you are on the scattergram, see what you need to do. Maybe your SAT is here, your ACT is about here. I would say let's focus on preparing and raising that SAT score a little higher to try and get in that mid 50%. I mentioned already the test optional, test blind. Every student situation is different. That's where we can individually guide your student and answer questions. And then if test scores are required for specific programs, it might be the university doesn't require their test blind, but for the nursing program, they have to have a test score to admit them to that college or university. I'm not going to throw out names because I'll mess up, but some schools are doing that. And I certainly think we'll see more schools go back to using those. So don't think that students don't have to have a score. I definitely want them preparing for that, and hopefully we can get them individualized guidance on what is appropriate for their situations. College visits for our juniors, you have 3 in the junior year. This is the process. It's in our handbook and lots of places. Sophomores certainly could do college visits. Are recommended as they begin to open up. Spring break's a wonderful time. Any day off we have. Martin Luther King Day coming up. Lots of resources and times you can get out to colleges without missing school, but we only permit and give the excused absences to our juniors. So moving forward, complete the assigned task in Naviance, review your PSAT scores, and sign up to take that SAT or ACT if you're a junior. The ACT deadline is this Friday for our upcoming February ACT that we are offering here at Cathedral High School. We are offering the March 13th SAT at Cathedral High School. You can take those tests at any school that offers in the local area, but you need to get signed up and registered for those, and students will be told how to do that. And then scheduling your individual meeting with us. We are moving to a software called Calendly to help us schedule our appointments. Students will be given links to do that, as will parents, and we will individually meet with our students based upon those appointments that they schedule with us. So now I am finished with the presentation, and this is a good summary of really working together, helping our students discern God's gift that's been given to them, working together and understanding and talking to each other as we maybe have some different understandings or questions. We are here to serve you and your students and hope that you will walk alongside us in that process. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, open it up to our other counselors to come on and begin answering some of these questions. And we'll go ahead and just read through those and I'll let Ms. Palaka kind of lead me through this.
Well, and I think we just answered the one of when should my junior take the SAT or ACT. So you covered that one. So we're good there. I'll take this first one. It says, can my junior apply to schools before their senior year, i.e. last semester of junior year? And the answer to that would be no. When students apply, they have their grades through their junior year, and most applications will not open until August 1st. There are one or two out there that'll hit a July opening, but very, very few. We will not even send transcripts until we are done with dropping out in the fall and have everybody's schedule set. But that being said, there will be opportunities later this spring and in the summer to work on the Common App essay, because those usually are announced in February, March timeframe. Our workshops, God willing, they are live this year because we love spending time with the kids and walking them through the process. We walk through that Common App process line by line. So a student could, in essence, walk in August when we do some of our kickoff work and have most of their application ready to send. So they won't do anything in the spring because they're not done with their spring of junior year and we need those grades. But we do try to get them prepared so they're ready to hit the ground running as soon as we get to school in the end of the summer. Here's somebody, one of the counselors can grab this. For FAFSA, will they look at the sophomore and junior year income, prior year, in other words?
Yeah, I misspoke a little bit. It's basically they moved a couple of years ago to not have to get your taxes done to be able to file your FAFSA. So it's just that 1 year that they look at that income situation, and that's now backed up. The FAFSA can now be submitted starting October rather than waiting until January, so that you can get your aid packages sooner. So it's only 1 year's worth of income, and it's for the household of that student where they spent 50% or more of their evenings in that bed. So that's the way the FAFSA looks at that. Every college does a little differently. Some of them will use institutional, look deeper at that, but that's something that you can do in the senior year. But it is the year prior information they're gathering off of your, and it actually pulls directly from your filing of your taxes. There's a data feature tool to do that.
And so this year seniors will file their 2019 taxes, and then you file every year after that. So for my sophomore college daughter, I'll be filing 2019 information. Next question any of us can grab. If you are waitlisted, can you wait until after May 1st to decide, or can you back out if you choose school number 2 and then school number 1 comes back and offers admission after May 1? You want me to take that one?
Please, yep.
Yeah. If a student is waitlisted, I always say that means they like you. They just don't know if they have room for you. So there are some schools that will release waitlist decisions before May 1. Some will do it right after May 1. I've had very, very rarely, it could be June or July, depending on numbers. You do need to go ahead and commit to a school. So you need to fall in love with that second choice school, make your deposit. And then if you get off the wait list, then you have to make that decision if you want to go to the school you're waitlisted at. You will lose your deposit after May 1, but that's really the only downside to it. You can make the choice to back out. You just lose your money.
I see a question about, now that we can add schools to Naviance, as parents, can we delete them? I don't know the answer to that. I don't think so, but yeah, we might be able to have a second here at the end to play on the Naviance a little bit, and I don't want to get lost in that. So we'll get through some more questions here.
I would throw out the piece to that this is the student's portal. You're a reviewer in the student's portal. We can add schools as well, but I would not take a school off of your student's list unless you have sat down at the dining room table and talked through it with them and told them that you needed to take it off, because this is kind of their space. And this is their exploration, and whether they end up applying or not, half the time, all of us can attest, there's lists on that. Colleges, I'm thinking about lists that never, ever, ever make it to the colleges I'm applying to list. It's just their time to kind of throw out ideas.
Another good question here: how do we broaden her interest and when jobs and activities are very restricted and limited right now? What is the most important school activity we should pursue to add to her resume? You know, certainly things have changed, but I know there's still ways to get involved, and that we need to get creative. And I've seen some really awesome ways. We had one of our students who helped make some face shields. He built some old 3D printers and produced those and showed that he met a need. So I would argue that really, in times of challenge and any time, think about what is the need and how can you make a difference. And what colleges are looking for, they're not looking for a student that's done 100 things that looks like they are involved in everything. They want to know what you're passionate about and how you're going to bring that passion and contribute to their campus. and they're not looking for all the same people. The famous story is, yeah, Notre Dame's looking for a bassoon player this year. So everyone starts taking private bassoon lessons, and we have 150 bassoonists apply. Now we don't need bassoonists, we need something else. So don't chase what you've heard, or let the student figure out where God's calling them. Really discern with them, pray with them. And then as you understand what that is, how do I get involved and develop that? How do I contribute and make a difference? And now that I'm doing that, when I write that essay that I built a 3D printer to make face shields, it's not to say I did it to get on your resume. It's because I was passionate. I saw a need and I solved a problem. That's going to be what gets your student in, is that area of passion, making a difference, being somebody that we want on our campus to contribute. So again, I would highlight the passion, area of passion, and really going after that.
I had a student this past summer who really had hoped to do something overseas, some kind of exchange, or kind of enhance her cultural awareness. She found an online program. I don't know the name of it, but she was doing an online exchange with students from Iran and Turkey and different places, and they were doing it virtually, but they got to know each other's cultures a little better. So she kind of a little bit outside the box on that one. So that was kind of cool. One of the questions, I'll cover the first part of this one, Martin, if you want to cover the second. It says, how do we edit address or contact information for parents? You should never really do that on Naviance. That is not our official SIS system. If you need to fix addresses, email addresses from when you did your renewal through the admission office in the summer, contact your counselor so that we can actually get it in PowerSchool correctly. What's in Naviance, the email was important, obviously, because we want to get the parent, but we pull all of that from PowerSchool and update it. So I wouldn't go changing a lot of that address stuff in Naviance, because we would need to change it officially so that that's all correct for any further information from the principal, the vice principal, all of that. And then I don't know if we'll have time to do this, Martin, but how do the parents add a school to their list?
It's under that college that I'm thinking about, and I think you just can favor it with a heart, and that adds it to their list, and we'll see it on our side that it was added by the parent. And I don't think we're going to have time to demonstrate to parents tonight. I probably would get lost and click the wrong button. So I definitely want you to play with your student, spend some time. They've all been taught this. I was just looking at how much they've used it. The sophomores, they were introduced last year, I think in November, and many of them used it then initially. And I think again in March, we had another activity, pretty good usage. And then we're going to be doing this presentation very similar, and then actually working with your students to do their homework assignments and get them in their Naviance account. So they all will be doing that work with us this week. And that's in the religion class. And we spread that out over this week, and I think into next Tuesday. So they should be coming home with a very familiar with Naviance, where they go. I would ask you to, as we say, play ignorant. Show me what you're learning in the religion class. We heard that you've done some cool stuff. Let them show you that. The other thing I want to emphasize is, now that you have parent accounts, I really would like the parents to log into their accounts, the students to log into their accounts, because then I can tell who's really involved and engaged in this process. And if I see a 50 registrations for a student and only one for the parent, I'm going to guess that was a parent, because students don't go in 50 times in a day. But please just know that you have access to view what they're doing. But if you ever want to work with them and get some things done, have them open up their laptop or their iPad and sit down with them. This is a time where you need to have those conversations. And whether you don't nag. I've got 3 myself. I've been accused, but every Sunday we would say during the senior year, you're going to sit down and have an hour meeting to talk about where they are. Now maybe every other Monday we're going to sit down and go through these things. So
one final question that I think is a good quick one is, how does my student get help on their essays? There's a lot of great resources out there, but I will tell you, we help. We all work with us. Mrs. Myers likes the commas and the semicolons. I like the content. We all have our different things that we like about essays and what we like to pick apart. But our English teachers are second to none, and they have supported us in our workshops. They have supported our students in helping them with their drafts. So I would say your live help on campus is the first place to go.
And they do some work in the English classes. I think they do that in the comp class. So they actually have a lot of times a draft they did in the comp class with that. So, well, we're approaching the 8 o'clock time, and I think I proved that we like to start on time and end on time. So I don't see any other pressing questions here. Definitely hope this was helpful. This will be sent out as a recorded presentation in a follow-up email with some reminders of other things. Again, encourage your students to be involved and engaged in this process. Make sure they're listening and doing the homework we've asked them to do. And now we all know who our counselors are. So if you have questions, I'd recommend you really send those through email to your individual school counselor so that we have an opportunity to get to know you and your student, and we'll get back with you either through a reply or a phone call. And we can set up a Zoom meeting with parents as well if necessary to help you answer some of these questions. So we're going to be working with our students over this week, giving them through January to kind of work on that, as well as some scheduling information that's going to be sent out here. And then we'll start those individual meetings with your students in February and plan to have all those finished by end of February, early March. So that's the process. Hopefully it makes sense. Really loving working with your kids. Great to be back on the Hill here. And we look forward to continuing to work together to help your students discover, develop, discern, and ultimately deliver those gifts to God in this world. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening.